Very good morning to all the colleagues who are starting to enter the page and who are already watching us on tape delayed through this recording. Well, we are here initiating a cycle of conferences of Phase A on self-knowledge, knowledge of oneself. Today we are going to start the agenda. We are going to start with a new cycle of conferences. This is lecture number 1, the first one, which allows us to really know what is the objective of all this teaching, and for people to begin to assimilate the knowledge, in a practical way. So we are going to see the focus on what is self-knowledge and what are these lectures that we are giving to each one. Here on this page or on this YouTube channel, remember that this is a cycle of conferences. Our 50 conferences of Phase A, 25 of Phase B, which are the bases, are therefore the bases, the key points, so to speak, so that people can have, light, that is to say, some concrete, specific points that will allow them to have a general understanding of what the work is, about what needs to be done. These conferences are free of charge, completely free of charge. Remember that this knowledge cannot be mixed with money in any way. So we have to deliver it for free, totally free and well for the new ones. Free and good for the new ones, because this topic, it is very important for them to keep this in mind. And let's start, shall we, with the lecture, Self-Knowledge. Knowledge? You will notice that the note yes. Self-knowledge is the highest note of the musical scale, right? And that yes is related to the payment, to the wisdom, to the divine being. So a person who knows himself totally is that person who has already united himself, who has become exclusive to his own being. So we can speak of a person who has succeeded in knowing himself totally when he has integrated himself with his Father, yes, to his inner God. So we are going to start a process. Yes, we are going to learn in this knowledge that the methods, the teachings, the practices that we are already learning in this process, the teachings, the practices that we are going to see later on, to be objective, isn't it? What is the purpose of life? People go to ask themselves a lot of questions that no one can answer. So people ask themselves where we come from, why I was born, where I am going. Is there anything beyond death? Is a person born and then dies at an early age? Or does he die in adolescence? Or as an adult, or as an old man? And what happens after that? What is the real purpose of existence? To come to vegetate for a few years? What is life for? These are questions that people at some point of life are asked. We all ask ourselves these kinds of questions. Is it true what religions say or what philosophers say? Is it true that there are previous lives, past lives? People come at some point in their existence to question. At some point in their existence to question many things that they do not find the answers to. So that is what we are going to do within ourselves. We are going to look inside ourselves and start to discover the crude reality, to reach this full self-knowledge. So here we are going to learn the practices, the methods for that kind of, to acquire that wisdom. Now people accept or admit that they have a physical body because we can feel, but there is a part that is more complex, that is more difficult to accept, which is the psychological part. Psychological part, the person cannot see their psyche. They do not know how to do. How they can investigate it, how they can control their psyche and their mind. So, they consider that the psyche is something that is not very important. They take away value. Here we teach people how to search through the practice of self-observation, to begin to investigate that inner world, that psyche that we all have. People have many concerns and want to know many secret things that exist on the planet, in the universe, in the galaxies. Achieve that. You need to know yourself in order to be able to awaken higher capacities that allow them to do that kind of research. For example, the Greeks used to say, "Man, know yourself and you will know the universe and the gods." Every person then has a self, a part of God, a wisdom. And if he so chooses, then he can seek and find and interact with that divine part. So we see that God is everywhere, but we have not been able to perceive him within us. So we have to start looking for the way to know ourselves through inner work. We also need to know that we have basically three aspects. The first one would be the body, physical body. We can see it, we can feel it, receive. Second, we have the psychological part, which is the soul, which is the energy formed by the mind, the emotion. And we also have a very important part. We all have dormant, which is the consciousness. That is the true light. The eternal, the true, the transcendental. Those three parts are what make up a person. It is not only the physical body. We identify a lot with the physical body, but it is not the only thing we are. People assume that the physical body is or is the same as the transcendental. Physical is or is the same as the mind, as the emotion, and it turns out that they are three aspects that, although they are interacting or they are forming a whole system, then they are independent of each other. So it is important to understand is the matter of that physical body, which is a condenser of energy, the part of the psyche, the soul, because it is 97% trapped in the part of our essence is trapped there. And that psyche is the one that moves the whole physical body. Then here we find all the forms of being emotional, intellectual, instinctive, and the consciousness, which is the superior part of a person, the divine part within that person, which is the eternal, the immortal. So here we came to search, to know, to awaken that consciousness and to begin to ascend in the search for that inner wisdom. To know ourselves, because it is necessary to know that there are 4 pillars of wisdom. So the 4 pillars in science, art, psychology, and mysticism, those are the ones we are going to see, the ones we are going to be expanding during all the lectures. All the lectures are based on these 4 pillars. All knowledge is based on these 4 pillars. So it is necessary to reflect a lot on these 4 aspects of the knowledge that is delivered to us. That is delivered in this group, then we have science. Science is the method or the process to know, to give an explanation, to experiment in a direct way. Then science is going to teach us here the knowledge, the methods to penetrate our inner world. Here we are going to teach the practices, because the knowledge is practical. That is, it is not theoretical. It has a base theory, but the theory is always focused on practice. always the practice, to understanding. So anyone who sees with his own eyes, who experiences things directly, is someone who wants to awaken. The person is not taught to believe, he is taught to seek, to check for wisdom. That is what we are looking for here. So the word knowledge comes from knowing. We have practices in the syllabus, very important practices in the curriculum, such as concentration, astral unfolding, retrospection. We also teach how to negotiate with the lords of the divine. What is karma? We have war meditation, we have transcendental meditation, we have relieving practices, and much more. Then we have the most important practice, which is psychological death, which is what we are going to see. Yes? So these practices make the person, start to internalize, look inside himself for the answers, and stop believing, stop theorizing, stop intellectualizing, and start looking inside himself for the answers, and stop looking for them outside, and stop looking for them outside. Looking for them outside. You are not going to find them neither in the universities nor anywhere else. People then believe that they know themselves because, they identify themselves because they were born in the same country. They identify themselves because they were born in a certain country, in a certain family, and they have never really known themselves until now. Well, if they make an effort, right? If they make an effort to begin to know themselves, then the practices allow the person to go deep into their inner world and begin to realize why they act, how it acts. We also teach a practice that is in the second pillar, which is art. Art teaches us to create, and here we saw how to make a work of art with ourselves, Through the sexual breeding energy is all the possibilities to create a superior human being, So through this practice called supersexuality, we are going to create superior existential bodies of the being. Those bodies, in order to be able to have representation, manifestation, or whatever you want to call it, in the different superior dimensions of nature. What does the practice consist of? Well, that a man and a woman, a stable couple, have a sexual relationship of a higher type. It is important to clarify it where the stick is going to be joined. And they will practice this practice without reaching ejaculation or orgasm in the case of the woman. Or orgasm in the case of the woman. And we are going to know that if the person continues to form, he will continue to weaken. It is like taking the sap out of a plant. It dries up and it will end up drying up with time. And with time, people lose power, they lose energy, they lose strength, they wither, they deteriorate, they get older, they get old, and they are destroyed by the fact that they are destroyed. And they are destroyed because they take out all their strength, all their power, their vitality, the strength that is implicit in the sexual creative energy. So here we teach then what is the practice of this pasexis, which is a very simple practice because it has no major complication, but it is important is to do so. The effort to realize it and therefore to achieve that transcendental objective, which is to create the higher existential bodies of the being, that is to say the internal bodies. The higher existential bodies of the being, that is the internal bodies. So then we are going to explain quickly the practice so that the person can have an idea and later on he, she can do it. So if he has his partner, he can realize it, can do it. In any case, in other conferences, we are going to expand on the subject in more detail. Then a small supplication is made to the Father and to the Divine Mother, a conjuration that we will also see later on. And then we begin to learn the body, the strength, the excitation through caresses, kisses, and in this way we achieve that the excitation of the stick and the lubrication of the body is achieved, of the woman's yoni. Then comes the connection, the the sexual union, the penetration of the phallus in the female sexual apparatus, and thus begins the respiratory process. The respiratory process begins. Has 3 stages: inhalation, retention, and exhalation. And exhalation, in each one of these processes, then each one of them, the couple concentrates on their apparatus, on their energy, then inhales, imagines the entrance of the air to the lungs, and then takes that air to the glands, and then takes that air to the sexual gonads. In the case of the man to the circles, the woman to the ovaries, and when it arrives there. And when it arrives there, then comes the second stage, which is the retention. Imagine then that from the sexual glands a golden thread rises. A light that turns on all the vertebral column. And that vertebra by vertebra goes up until it reaches to the interspinous. And then comes the third stage, which is the exhalation. When you exhale, you mantralize, slowly and elongated, the air. There is a respiratory process of exhaling, and then again, then inhale. Repeat the process. Inhale, imagine that the air enters the lungs, then hold. Then imagine that the sexual energy then ascends like a golden thread, ascends up to between the eyebrows, and then exhale. But here already pronouncing is the A, lengthening. And again inhale. The energy enters, takes it to the lungs, then to the sexual glands. Here it retains, imagines that the golden thread goes up, reaches between the eyebrows, and exhales. And exhales with the leaf. Then each vowel is a respiratory process of inhalation, retention, and exhalation. It is very simple practice. Then this serves to create the higher existential bodies of the being. We have to work very hard then in the psychological part, since we will see that because we are going to see that to be able to have an adequate control, to have the strength to remove that amount of morbidity, of madness. Yes, because the movements must be soft. That is to say, we are not looking for overexcitement, but a process that is to create the bodies, that is a process that is to create bodies that is completely calm, right? Completely calm, isn't it? So you have to have a full concentration in this practice, which is very high. This practice, which is very high. This practice regenerates the physical body, revitalizes it, reconstructs it, gives it vitality, rejuvenates the whole physical body. Well, now we are going to see the part of psychology. Well, it is important to know that the human race is in a state of total obscurantism. The human race is terribly degenerated, and this school is a school of regeneration. And this school is a school of human regeneration. You see everywhere the sexual degeneration because it is already alarming. Drugs, alcohol, debauchery, denigration in all areas of society, wars, prostitution, anarchy, misery, delinquency, and all the training that we have at that time. At that moment, the training that we have in the media is deceitful, it is false. At the political level, it is false. It is false at the political level, it is false at the religious, educational, family level. People who in their great majority are good people, and a great aspect of the psychology that all of us have is bad, negative, 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 negative. It is bad, it is negative. But we have to understand that this is good and this is bad, this is bad, this is good, and this is bad, this is bad, and this is bad. This is what moves the whole society, all humanity, because it is part of the psychologist's self, within ourselves, because there live millions of different psychological states. In other words, we are never the same during the whole day. In a given moment. We are kind people. then we are rude, haughty, irritating, or in another moment we are benevolent people. In another moment we are religious people. Then we are scandalous, talkative, seismic. In another moment we are taking out the capes of the people. We are terribly with processes of depression, of fear, of sadness, of bitterness, of pain. Then our psychological states change from second to second. Every second a person enters, another one enters, and then another. It is as if we are being pulled by invisible strings, and at every moment someone different will enter to take possession of our physical part. So we have hundreds of millions of effects. We are simply butterflies, puppets that are moved by those strings that we do not see. Strings that we do not see. So we have no individuality. A person promises today that he is going to love a woman, or the opposite, a woman to a man, and after a while another defect comes out and says, I have nothing to do with that commitment. Then he says, I no longer love her, and promises something and then does not fulfill it or regrets it. It is important that understand that no one has a conscience. People think they have conscience, but people do not have conscience. We have psychological defects. We call those psychological defects eyes, because we speak in the first person. This is not to criticize anyone, because we all have the same eyes. But these different eyes manifest themselves in different ways, but they are still the same eyes. Different forms, but they are still the same eyes. So we have the same thing. So then that consciousness that is trapped in those psychological defects, well, we have to free it. We have to free it. That is what we came here for. That is to say, the person continues believing that it is very good, that religion is very good, that at this moment there are more than 4,000 religions, and all of them are very good. More than 4,000 religions, and they all talk about having the truth, and this is part of intellectualism. And this is part of the mystical intellectualism, which has nothing to do with the divine part. So we have received, we have created, we have assimilated an erroneous vision of God. And there are people who believe in God in one way, others in another way, and others in another way. In some religions they say that God is a cow. In others they say that God is this, that God is that. They all see God through a concept, a psychological defect called mysticism, or the false I consciousness, or the false consciousness. But that has nothing to do with true consciousness. Those sentimentalisms that we have, the affection, the attachment for a relative, for a person, we believe that it is the right thing to do, but we believe that it is the right thing to do, but when people start to understand, to realize, to investigate inside themselves, they will discover that this is a psychological defect. Now a person could say that it is exaggerated to say that such apparently beautiful emotions are not a person's conscience. Feels that love is a bit of sentimentalism that later on it will change. Or else you fall in love with a very dear girl, apparently very pretty, and you fall in love with a very pretty girl. And you fall in love with a very pretty girl, and then that woman becomes fat, gets older, she gets fat, she gets older, she fades, her hair falls out, she gets wrinkled. And you're going to realize that you are not going to feel the same way anymore. Then you will realize that it is not love, that it was simply an illusion moved by an image, by a physical form. So we always have to question ourselves. And here we come, or we came to knowledge to learn how to get out of all that kind of false vision of life, of money, of love, of the family, all that huge amount of concepts that are there, all that intellectual development. The truth is that the only thing that is in our head is a quantity of concepts that nobody knows nothing about. Concepts that are learned at school, at college, at university, in different places. The technology that is handled is an embodied technology that has nothing to do with the technology of the superior races. There are so many things that need to be reflected upon, that need to be questioned, that need to be disarmed in order to be able to liberate that force that seeks the reality and the truth of everything. Then we are totally hypnotized in this decadent intellectualized society, intellectual and intellectualoid, full of pride, of arrogance, and then we are trapped in a small planet called Earth that in comparison with the whole universe and the beings that are in the universe, there are extremely advanced races. They have technology much superior to ours, far superior to ours. So we must understand the human misery in which we are in, the human misery in which we are stuck, and the knowledge will give us the tools to get out of it. So here we teach a practice called self-observation. Self-observation, the person can understand that the internal centers, that the mind, the emotion, the instinct, the sex, are badly formed at this moment. People have to realize that all the inner centers, the mind, the emotion, the instinct, the sex, are not well formed at the moment. They are deteriorating. Human psychology is therefore badly formed. Human psychology is totally obscure. So through self-observation of all these defects, we go to look for what it is to be in a state of silence on a mental level, on an emotional level, on a controlled emotion, on an instinctive level, a controlled girdle, and on a sexual level as well. Emotion, on an instinctive level, a controlled girdle, and on a sexual level as well. Then all these defects are discovered and eliminated through the death in March. Then you are giving in a state of full consciousness. When would it happen? It's like a child starts. A child doesn't think, it has not yet developed the intellect, then it acts consciously. According to its 3% of consciousness, has no more but is conscious. I'm talking about a small child who later on psychological defects are introduced and he loses that capacity of consciousness, he falls asleep. Why is that? Because the intellect is developed and that 3% of conscience is put to sleep, and then we become what we are now, robotic people who are at the service of a decadent consumer society, a plastic society, a robotic society, that are at the service of a decadent consumer society, a plastic society, that everyone manages a hypocritical appearance because it has nothing to do with reality. With the truth, with conscience, with the crude reality of life. So if the person observes all these defects and asks for death, he asks the Divine Mother, the inner mother, which is a part of God in him, which is love. Then when he asks the mother, "Mother, my love, take me this self." Come back and stay here, quiet, silent, at peace, in inner peace, and totally controlled consciousness. If you are going to solve a problem, or a situation that needs to be solved or make a decision, then there is another practice called reflection, reflective reflection. Then for that, there is another practice called reflection, reflective reflection. Then he uses the consciousness applied in that reflection to solve the problem he has to solve, and the rest of the time he is going to be unguided in a continuous self-observation, killing all the problems he has to solve. In a continuous self-observation, killing all those defects that have kept a person asleep. Have kept a person asleep all his life, and the person continues, and the person is still asleep all the whole time. We are speaking mentally as a person who is therefore unbalanced, mentally full of depression, sadness, stress, bad temper, depression, sadness, stress, bad temper, 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 of despair, of anguish. Shouting, shouting, arguing, thinking badly of one or the other, totally hypnotized by the other. So this practice of death in motion is extremely fundamental, and it is the one that will allow us to change this way of being. Proud, arrogant, dark, dirty, that has turned us into simply worms, degenerate worms that form this race, that make up this humanoid race. Then the person must develop that capacity of self-observation, of searching for that silence, for that tranquility, for that inner peace all day long. And all these defects that appear must be eliminated through the death in March, asking the mother, my mother, kill this for me. Then she feels that this defect is burned, and it comes back again, and the physical machine, in silence, calm, serene. And he keeps looking, and then another defect appears and kills him, and another and kills him. And in a day it can kill 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 defects in this way. Then this is how this consciousness that is trapped at this moment is liberated and awakened. Well, let's see the last part, which is called mysticism. Mysticism teaches us to develop love for work, for external work, for the work, for the external work, and for the previous work. So when the person has love or begins to develop that love, he begins to help others, begins to serve others. In my case, we are giving a lecture. This lecture is given in order to help others. This lecture is given in order to help people to start working on the work of their being, that they begin to free themselves from the ego, that they begin to look for their happiness, that they begin to look for their fortune, nature of one's own being. So when one gives this in a way with the feeling of helping, of collaborating, of total dedication to total surrender to humanity, so that they do not continue in this perpetual suffering in which they find themselves. So then one awakens that love. Love must be put in all the work, in the death, in the birth, in all the practices that are done. So you have to make an effort to feel the need to collaborate. This sacrifice for humanity is what is going to allow us to experience that degree of being able to help people, and that people to get out of their problems with one's help. So that is a very nice vibration. That is the force of love. That energy generates very strong, very important changes within us. It gives us vigor, strength. And the more we help humanity, the more we advance in this path. That strength is what allows us to perfect all this capacity to do, all our capacity to work. Our capacity to work. So love is in the works, not in the concepts, not in the words, because it is a substantial. It is a substantial. Love is in the capacity to serve and help. Works without love are not given. You cannot awaken love by being selfish people. Selfish people. You have to help your brothers. You have to help humanity. That is why we prepare ourselves. That is why we are instructors. That is why we help the humanity that needs it so much. So we need that strength that will allow us to advance in the work. Also with that strength, we are going to pay a lot of karma, and that allows us to advance in a more accelerated way. That is the true mystique. Mystique gives us to walk around in a monk's or priest's dress or be there praying. That is mysticism. That is not mysticism. Mysticism is to help another person, unselfishly, because if there is interest, then there is no love. That's why knowledge is not charged. It is not mixed with donations, nor with alms, nor with anything like that. And finally, let's see the objective of self-knowledge. What is the main objective of all this? The intimate self-realization of the being. That is the objective. That is why we deliver this knowledge. There are some objectives that are given along the way, which is to liberate the consciousness. It is given gradually. The integration, therefore the regeneration, Regeneration, one gradually regenerates oneself. The higher existential bodies of the being are also gradually being walked, of wisdom, knowledge of nature, from outer space, high-level technologies, from of the superior races. All of this will be known. We will know the intraterrestrials, the beings that live inside the planet. We will know their laws. We will know all the beings that live in the interior of the planet. We are going to know their laws, to know all the forces that move within nature. All this is going to happen gradually. We are going to achieve individuality. And the last part of the work is to incarnate the inner Christ. And when we are very advanced in this work, we will crystallize. We are going to crystallize. All these are the objectives that will be fulfilled as the person advances in this path. He will have knowledge of science, medicine, super advanced technologies, who does not belong to this corrupted, degenerate race in which we are involved. A race, a pornicaria race, a decadent race, a race atrophied in every sense. This knowledge is for people who want to rise to higher levels of intelligence, of wisdom, want to belong to high levels of universal intelligence. That is what this knowledge is for. So everyone is invited to the 75 totally practical lectures, which are given totally free of charge. Totally free of charge. Absolutely nothing is charged. And 50 Phase A lectures and A and 25 Phase B lectures. I am not the only one giving this lecture. There are more colleagues lecturing out there on various pages. We are all talking about the same thing. It is the same subject. And while the people who are listening to us and are new, well, welcome. If they need some conferences or something, it is cyclical, so at some point we will be uploading this channel here. The different virtual platforms, so that you can get to know them. Well, I bid you farewell. Thank you very much for listening to this conference, and we invite you to join our WhatsApp groups. And be very well.